Hey guys, Jim Skelton here. Welcome back to the 5-Minute Watch Review. Here we're going to take more or less 5 minutes to discuss some of your favorite watches, give you some of the features and benefits, and help you make that buying decision, including the most important part, talking about the pricing and if it's really worth the price that we're seeing it for. Let's hop in right now and get started. Today we're going to be taking a look at another brand that I have not had the chance to bring out to you prior, and this is Gruppo Gamma. Now, Gruppo Gamma it's an interesting little brand. They were founded in 2013 in Singapore, and the company was formed by a couple of watch connoisseurs, watch collectors, and in my opinion, I think they've done a pretty good job of manufacturing low production with high quality at fairly decent prices. They're not cheap, but they're good for the level of the workmanship that I think that they're putting in them. And what we're looking at here is the Divemaster prototype. Now, the prototype that you're seeing here is going to be fairly different from the production model, and I've gotten the notes from Gruppo Gamma as far as what the differences are, and we'll go through those. But the basic idea of this watch, the principle of this watch will remain the same. Now, since the watch is a prototype, do keep in mind there are going to be, marks and nicks and scratches on it, and there's been at least one other person that's had a chance to do a review on this watch before I got it, so please do keep that in mind. I've also worn this for about a week just to get a feel for the watch before I did this video, because there was something about this watch that when I saw it in pictures, it didn't do anything for me. When it first arrived, I went, oh, that's better than I expected, but still not winning me over. And it took me wearing the watch and running through my day to appreciate the way this watch feels and the way they built it. So let's go over the specs, and then I'll detail later what the differences are between the prototype and the production model. So you've got a 44mm case. In my opinion, it plays larger, so it is going to feel, or at least appear to be, a little bit larger on the wrist. It's about 52mm from lug to lug, so it's got a nice spread going on there. It's going to be 16mm thick. This one, being the prototype, is 18mm thick, and I'll explain why there's going to be a difference later on. You've got a 24mm strap. You will not be receiving the strap or seeing the strap that's on here. This was just a strap they put on so that the watch could be reviewed. You're going to get a sapphire crystal. You get a sapphire lume bezel. And even though the dial here says 500 meters water resistant, they have reduced it for production to 300 meters. You're still going to be getting the automatic helium escape valve. And inside, even though you can't see it through the solid steel caseback, is the SII NH35 automatic movement. So that's going to give you a beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour. So it's not the most liquid, smooth movement to the center sweep hand, but it is still very, very smooth. Obviously something running at like 28.8 or higher. It's almost, the little stops in between are almost imperceptible. If you really stare at this, you'll see the very slight little hesitations, but still a fantastic movement that has proven itself over the years to be a really great, reliable movement. It winds in both directions, so if you're using a watch winder, doesn't matter which way you put it on. Accuracy is around 20 to 30 seconds per day. They can be adjusted to run within COSC specs, keep that in mind. And your example is probably going to be more accurate than the stated allowance. And the power reserve is about 40 hours. So it's a good, solid, robust movement. They're going to be very tough, which is good for a dive watch. You're going to tend to wear a dive watch as a daily. You're going to knock it around, bang it around. This is a good shock-resistant movement. Now pricing, if you do it under the pre-order, which is going on currently as I'm making this video, it's $3.99. If you wait till after the pre-order is done and the production is being offered on a daily basis, it will go up to $4.99. So you get a $100 savings for pre-ordering, and I think that is a wonderful incentive. It's a good amount of money to save. All right, so basically the case is going to be 2 millimeters slimmer than this one, because on the prototype they have a soft iron inner case underneath the stainless steel. They're doing away with that because really it's unnecessary and it costs a lot of money. The reason why you would want a soft iron inner case is to further protect the movement from magnetism. Now, this is not World War II. We're not dealing with the same issues that, say, pilots would have in those times with radio interference and radar and things like that. I don't really have to worry about it. So, also, today's mechanical movements are already very anti-magnetic, so it's overkill. And it's overkill that wasn't necessary, and I'm sure that helped them to reduce the cost by not doing that. So it's going to be lighter weight than what I've got here and slimmer. Instead of having this raised vintage style look on the sapphire crystal, you're just going to get a simplified dual domed sapphire crystal, which is great. Nothing wrong with that. I've seen it this way, and I've seen it on the pictures they have of the production model. It looks just as good, so I wouldn't take any knocks for that at all. They're going to make 4 versions. They're going to offer stainless steel versions. They're going to offer a version in black DLC. The hands will be different than what you're seeing. It's the same hands, but they're going to go into a matte finish. And let's see, some versions, they'll just be all silver tone hands, and some versions will have a seconds hand like this in the red. But they still will, hours, minutes, and seconds, all be a matte finish, which I prefer. Shiny hands can sometimes be hard to read, so this is a great choice. And the strap on this, this is a really nice nubuck suede leather strap, which I'm sure you can buy from them, because they have an accessory section on their website, but you're going to get an isofrane rubber strap on there, and if you buy the full kit version, you're also going to get a nice genuine leather strap along with that. So you'll be getting 2 straps, and they can be changed very, very easily by using the old Panerai screwed lug system. So you just simply take a screwdriver, pull out the screw, change out your strap, put it back in, and that's all there is to it. It screws into a threaded secondary lug over here. All of them, you're going to have also choices of a sandwich dial or a printed dial. I like the sandwich dial myself. For me personally, for my money, it's the black DLC with the sandwich dial. It looks a tiny bit less like an homage due to the finish, and it makes it a bit more modern as well. So I think I'm going to have to do that one for myself. I'm going to have to grab one of those. Now, I mentioned homage. Let's talk about that for a second. The first thing that bothered me about this is this looks nearly dead on to a vintage Blonde Pen Aqualung, and then the later 50 Fathoms. There was also a Waltham from the 1960s that looked identical to Blonde Pen's watch as well. And I don't know if the Waltham came first or the Blonde Pen came first, so it's really hard to call any of these watches a knockoff because the design has been done by a few manufacturers over time, even at the same time. And then even Helson and Seiko have taken their swipes at this design recently. So I'm not going to fault them for doing that, but the issue for me is they do it often. Their most notable model to date has been the Vanguard, which is very close to the look of a Panerai Luminor 1950 without the crown lock. I mean, it's really, 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 really close. And I think for a small brand that's doing small production, and they don't have to think of 30 new designs every year like a major company would, I would think it would be easier to come up with completely unique designs. That's the only knock I'll give them. I'm not knocking this watch for looking like the Blonde Pen or the Waltham, because I think they've done a nice job of making it their own. However, I will say that as a brand, I would really like to see more unique designs coming from them because they have the opportunity. Let's talk about the quality. Nice fit and finish on this. When I go to rotate the bezel, it only backs a tiny, tiny bit on the rotation, but I can get it to line up perfectly with every one of the indications. So there's not enough slop in there to be inaccurate for using that bezel. I like the dial. It's clean, nicely done, sandwich style dial. So the black dial that you see there, all of the hour markers are punched out completely. There's nothing there, and that exposes you to a disc that's underneath a secondary dial that's coated in the luminescence. Now they're not stating if it's super luminova. What I will do here in a second is give you a comparison to super luminova, and let's take a look and see how it performs against it. And it might be. I'm thinking it's probably, there's a Japanese compound called Nemoto. I'm thinking it's probably that, but we'll see. Nemoto is pretty much going to be the same degree of brilliance or overall luminescence when it's first charged, but super luminova will last longer. So we're going to hit it up with a flashlight. We'll do the deep blue first, because we know that's super luminova. And we'll even give that a few seconds to fade off while we're charging up the Divemaster. For those curious, this is the deep blue DiveStar 1000. It's been out for about a year now. Okay. Now, as you see, it is really nice, bright lume. They did a great job on that. We'll put these side by side, give you the comparison. It's very easy to read the dial. Hands are perfectly legible. Even though each of the indications are fairly small in size, I think they've done a fantastic job, an absolutely fantastic job of the application of lume to give you the brilliance. Now, I'm noticing here that it is fading off already, whereas the super luminova is not. Now, that's not to say still that it's not super luminova. It could just be a much thinner application, so it absorbs less light. You always have to take that into consideration. You know, you can get good lume from a decent compound with a lot of it, or a really great compound like super luminova and not have quite as much of it on there. But I'm going to have to say at this point now that it is not super luminova, but it is definitely good, respectable lume. And I'll show you again the difference as we throw a little bit of light on it to show you just how much it did fade. See, now it's back to being super crazy bright, and over the course of about a minute, you'll start to see it taper off. I would still assume it's going to give you a couple hours of legibility. Remember, when you're looking at a watch like this, any luminescence, whether it be luminescent compound paints, whether it be tritium or whatnot, it's not just about how your eye sees it right now. It's about when you're in the dark and your eyes have adjusted to the dark. So even if we watch this right now and it fades to what almost seems like nothing, if I were in a completely dark room and my eyes have adjusted to that, the dimmer luminescence would appear to be brighter to my eyes at that particular time. It's a lot of crazy stuff to have to think about, but that really is the reality of it. So let's get the lights back on here, put it on the wrist. This review is running much longer than I anticipated, but I think it kind of deserves it, especially when it's a prototype and there's important things to talk about with the differences between production and prototype, so that you really honestly know what to expect. Now, as I mentioned, that 44 millimeters does play large. I typically wear a larger watch than 44, and this worked perfectly for me. I like the strap thickness on this particular one. As you see, it's a very short strap on me, but again, you'll be getting the isoframe rubber strap and a standard leather strap included. Your watch will be 2 millimeters slimmer than this. That is a very big difference when you're talking about height. Going from 16 millimeters to 18 millimeters is a huge difference. So don't worry about it feeling too top heavy. I don't think you're going to have any issues whatsoever. So there it is on the wrist from all the angles. Nice, again, another little homage there, the Pre-V buckle sitting here on the strap, and that may just be a carryover. I don't know, it may be a carryover from their Vanguard possibly. But again, this is not the strap you're getting, so you may not get the Privy buckle. It may be a different kind of buckle. So there it is, guys. As far as my general assessment, I think at $3.99, especially with this movement, sapphire crystal, sapphire loomed bezel, I think it's absolutely 100% worth it. I would not hesitate for a second. At $4.99, it may be a slightly tougher pill to swallow, not because it's not worth it, but because now at $500, oh shit, there's a lot of competition out there at that price range. So keep that in mind. You know, do your shopping and make your comparisons. I honestly feel that if you like a classic look of a diver, you want kind of a vintage look. You're tired of all the modern stuff that's going on right now, all the cookie cutter designs. Everybody's watches look like one another. They're styled similarly. This takes you back into a time machine, going back into the 1950s, into the 1960s, into a simpler style of design. The only thing you should be aware of is it doesn't have a calendar. There's no date. And for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker. So keep that in mind while you're shopping as well. For me, it's not that big of a deal unless it's a watch. If I was only ever going to own this one watch, I couldn't do it. I have to have a date. But if it's a watch I'm going to wear 1, 2, 3, maybe times in a week, I'm totally fine with that. I have a few watches without calendars, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So, but that is something to keep in mind. For me, for my money, I think I'm going to get the black DLC with the sandwich dial. It's a handsome looking watch. It's not quite as homage-y. That's not a real word. You can't even spell that shit, but just take my word for it. Homage-y, we're going to use that as a real word. It looks slightly less like the Blonde Pen. So if that's something else that you prefer, go take a look at their website and see what you think. You might prefer the closer replication of that original look. That's entirely up to you. Give you a couple of close-up shots here on the way out the door. A nice big screwed-in crown. Which, by the way, I just noticed this, is slightly recessed into the case. It's not something that you see very often. I really dig that, so it protrudes a little bit less. And for a vintage style watch that wouldn't traditionally have crown guards, that's actually a really, really good idea. So, good on you, Gruppo Gamma. Alright guys, there you have it. Hope you enjoyed it. That's a handsome looking watch, I'll tell you right now. I gave you all the information you needed to make a conscientious decision. What you need to do is, if you like the video, click subscribe. That way you're always notified when I upload a new video.